At the eastern end of the Roman Forum is the imposing Arch of Titus. The capture of Jerusalem in 70 AD, one of the Roman Emperor Titus's greatest victories, is honored with this monument. It is not by chance that it occupies a crucial position within the Forum. One of the most dramatic and unforgettable elements of human conflict has always been siege warfare. This subject reverberates across myth, history, and popular memory. Sieges have captivated the imagination of civilizations, from Joshua's conquest of the ancient Hebrew city of Jericho to the siege of Troy in Greek and Roman mythology, and even the terrifying recollections of the siege of Leningrad in Russian culture. The historical and mythological sieges' severity emphasizes their importance. No other military encounter comes as close to a total war experience as a siege of a major city, according to historians Jeremy Armstrong and Matthew Trundle. This remark raises a crucial query. When did sieges initially occur? How did they appear? What tools were used by the attackers to get past these formidable defenses? We will examine these issues and the oldest substantiated evidence of sieges, which date back more than 4,000 years, in this video. The history of siege combat. Protecting one's house became crucial when settled societies emerged during the Neolithic era, when people started to cultivate crops and establish long-term settlements. The earliest indications of fortifications, walls, ditches, and gates intended to repel invaders, appear at this time. The city of Jericho, whose wall dates to the 8th millennia BC, and Chatal Huyuk, whose outer walls encircled the city, are early examples of such fortifications. The purpose of these early fortifications was to defend expanding people against both internal and external dangers. As towns expanded and fortifications got more intricate, attackers quickly discovered ways to get past them. Armstrong and Trundle provide evidence from the Near East, Egypt, and Britain that indicates that attacks on these communities also occurred as long as stable communities existed. But it's important to realize that not every attack on a fortified place was a siege. By definition, a siege is distinguished from a simple attack by several characteristics. What does a siege entail? Historian Peter Wilson lists 5 essential characteristics that characterize a siege. First, the dispute is significant enough to be regarded as a singular occurrence. Second, the fight entails a battle over a target, like a city, that is protected by one side while the aggressor is kept at bay, usually by a wall. Third, by retaining the fortress until reinforcements come or the attacker exhausts all available resources, the defender tries to stall the aggressor. To put it simply, a siege is a conflict over a fortified area in which one side tries to breach the defenses while the other side defends. There were few options open to attackers to get past these defenses. Between the Bronze Age and the Middle Ages, these techniques were very similar. Scaling the wall, breaching it, undermining it, encircling the city or fortress, or using psychological strategies like feints or distractions were the 5 primary strategies. These techniques were frequently mixed and modified according to the particular circumstance. The initial signs of siege. Combat. The city-state of Mari existed more than 4,000 years ago near the Euphrates River in the southeast of present-day Syria. In the ruins of this once great cultural center, archaeologist André Perrogue found a little stone slab depicting a war scenario in 1971, dating from between 2550 and 2400 BC. The picture depicts an archer aiming from behind a soldier, wearing conventional Sumerian armor, who is clutching a big curved shield. The tableau is sometimes understood as showing a siege, with a naked man appearing to fall above them. The shield's dimensions and form imply that it was employed to protect against adversaries who held high ground, which is characteristic of a siege situation. Despite being largely abstract, Mari's portrayal is among the first concrete examples of siege warfare. There are even older but more abstract instances, such the so-called Libyan palette, which depicts 7 towns under siege and dates from approximately 3200 to 3000 BC. However, researchers are particularly interested in the recent finding of significant amounts of air-dried clay bullets in the ancient city of Hamar, which dates back to 3500 BC. Together with other indications of damage, these discoveries raise the possibility that this is the earliest known archaeological record of a siege. Early siege. Textual evidence. Although the historicity of these narratives can be disputed, sieges are also described in early texts outside of the archaeological record. One such tale is the Siege of Arata, which is described in a Sumerian legend and is thought to have taken place in 2600 BC. Another early documented narrative is the Siege of Ur, which is mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Sieges are mentioned more frequently after the second half of the 3rd millennium BC. According to historian Aaron Burke, sieges were the most common type of conflict in Mesopotamia during this time, particularly during the Bronze Age. In the 96 years during the 3rd dynasty of Ur, for example, at least 12 large cities were under siege, some of them more than once. Given how common these stories are, it is likely that sieges had a significant influence on the military environment of the era. The importance of sieges in early military strategy is further highlighted by the fact that Old and Middle Kingdom paintings of combat in Egypt frequently show assaults on fortified locations. Technology for siege and fortifications, a double ring of walls, a common characteristic of early and Middle Bronze Age fortifications, was present in the city of Attusa by the 17th or 16th century BC, near the center of the Hittite Empire. Similar fortifications were used in the construction of the majority of the cities during that time, including important ones like Babylon and Hattusa. These walls could reach a height of 10 meters and were typically constructed of mud brick on top of stone or clay foundations. Furthermore, a ditch or trench encircled many cities, making it challenging for attackers to get close to the walls. Siege warfare was a difficult task. Archers and slingers typically started attacks by moving forward to provide pressure to the defenders, causing them to flee behind the walls. Meanwhile, defenders' attempts to flee were thwarted by mobile chariot units. The purpose of this strategy was to keep the defenders busy, while the main force readied itself for the siege. The most direct attack strategy, scaling the walls, was dangerous and frequently led to significant deaths. Attackers resorted to more expensive and time-consuming techniques like mining, breaching, or creating siege ramps when scaling was not a possibility. Siege, ramps, and additional strategies. The usage of siege ramps was one of the most successful yet time-consuming strategies. Attackers were able to get to the top of the fortifications by avoiding the walls thanks to these ramps, which were constructed of stone and earth. Ramps were employed to overrun cities after they reached the height of the city walls, according to reports in the Mari archives. It could take weeks or even months to build such ramps, and throughout that time, archers and slingers had to apply steady pressure to keep the workers safe. Another crucial weapon in siege warfare. Siege towers served as platforms for slingers and archers, raising them over the defenders. While other techniques, such as mining or breaching, were being used, these towers enabled attackers to continue a steady attack. Although the steep slopes of many Bronze Age defenses made the use of wheeled towers difficult, images of siege towers with wheels in Egypt imply that these machines were intended to be mobile. Another crucial component of siege technology was the battering ram. The battering ram became one of the most important tools for destroying city gates and walls, even though there is no evidence of its use before 1500 BC. Typically, the ram was a huge metal-reinforced hardwood beam that was suspended inside a frame, usually with the assistance of soldiers operating it from within a shelter. This apparatus would swing against the walls or gates. For thousands of years, siege warfare has been a distinguishing characteristic of human conflict. The techniques for breaking down city walls have changed over time, but they are still based on the fundamentals of military strategy. From the earliest representations and archaeological discoveries to the more advanced siege technologies of the Bronze Age. As demonstrated, sieges were not just military operations, but also cultural events that influenced how societies recalled and described their hardships. From their beginnings to their evolution, the history of sieges demonstrates the resourcefulness and tenacity of those who battled to protect or overrun fortified cities.